even shouted out, "Lucy, Lou, where are you? I know you're here." There was no answer, and Edmund noticed that his own voice had a curious sound. Not the sound you expect in a cupboard, but a kind of open-air sound. He also noticed that he was unexpectedly cold, and then he saw a light. "Thank goodness," said Edmund. "The door must have swung open of its own accord." He forgot all about Lucy and went toward the light, which he thought was the open door of the wardrobe. But instead of finding himself stepping out into the spare room, he found himself stepping out from the shadow of some thick dark fir trees into an open place in the middle of a wood. There was crisp, dry snow under his feet, and more snow lying on the branches of the trees. Overhead there was a pale blue sky, the sort of sky one sees on a fine winter day in the morning. Straight ahead of him he saw between the tree trunks the sun, just rising, very red and clear. Everything was perfectly still, as if he were the only living creature in that country. There was not even a robin or a squirrel among the trees, and the woods stretched as far as he could see in every direction. He shivered. He now remembered that he had been looking for Lucy, and also how unpleasant he had been to her about her imaginary country, which now turned out not to have been imaginary at all. He thought that she must be somewhere quite close, and so he shouted, "Lucy! Lucy, I'm here too! Edmund!" There was no answer. "She's angry about all the things I've been saying lately," thought Edmund. And though he did not like to admit that he had been wrong, he also did not much like being alone in this strange, cold, quiet place, so he shouted again, "I say, Lou, I'm sorry I didn't believe you. I see now you were right all along. Do come out. Make it Pax." Still there was no answer. "Just like a girl," said Edmund to himself, "sulking somewhere and won't accept an apology." He looked round him again and decided he did not much like this place, and had almost made up his mind to go home, when he heard, very far off in the wood, a sound of bells. He listened, and the sound came nearer and nearer, and at last there swept into sight a sledge, drawn by 2 reindeer. The reindeer were about the size of Shetland ponies, and their hair was so white that even the snow hardly looked white compared with them. Their branching horns were gilded, and shone like something on fire when the sunrise caught them. Their harness was of scarlet leather, and covered with bells. On the sledge, driving the reindeer, sat a fat dwarf, who would have been about 3 feet high if he had been standing. He was dressed in polar bear's fur, and on his head he wore a red hood with a long gold tassel hanging down from its point. His huge beard covered his knees, and served him instead of a rug. But behind him, on a much higher seat, in the middle of the sledge, sat a very different person, a great lady, taller than any woman that Edmund had ever seen. She also was covered in white fur up to her throat, and held a long, straight golden wand in her right hand, and wore a golden crown on her head. Her face was white, not merely pale, but white like snow or paper or icing sugar, except for her very red mouth. It was a beautiful face in other respects, but proud and cold and stern. The sledge was a fine sight as it came sweeping toward Edmund with the bells jingling, and the dwarf cracking his whip, and the snow flying up on each side of it. "Stop!" said the lady, and the dwarf pulled the reindeer up so sharp that they almost sat down. Then they recovered themselves and stood chomping their bits and blowing. In the frosty air The breath coming out of their nostrils looked like smoke. "And what, pray, are you?" said the lady, looking hard at Edmund. My name's Edmund," said Edmund rather awkwardly. He did not like the way she looked at him. The lady frowned. "Is that how you address a queen?" she asked, looking sterner than ever. "I beg your pardon, your majesty. I didn't know," said Edmund. "Not know the Queen of Narnia?" cried she. "Ha! You shall know us better hereafter. But I repeat, what are you?" "Please, your majesty," said Edmund, "I don't know what you mean. I'm at school. At least I was. It's the holidays now." Chapter 4. Turkish Delight. "But what are you?" said the queen again. "Are you a great overgrown dwarf that has cut off its beard?" "No, your majesty," said Edmund. "I never had a beard. I'm a boy." "A boy?" said she. "Do you mean you are a son of Adam?" Edmund stood still, saying nothing. He was too confused by this time to understand what the question meant. "I see you are an idiot, whatever else you may be," said the queen. "Answer me once and for all, or I shall lose my patience. Are you human?" "Yes, your majesty," said Edmund. "And how, pray, did you come to enter my dominions?" "Please, your majesty, I came in through a wardrobe." "A wardrobe? What do you mean?" I opened a door and just found myself here, your majesty," said Edmund. "Ha!" said the queen, speaking more to herself than to him. A door from the world of men. I have heard of such things. This may wreck all, but he is only one, and he is easily dealt with." As she spoke these words, she rose from her seat and looked Edmund full in the face, her eyes flaming. At the same moment she raised her wand. Edmund felt sure that she was going to do something dreadful, but he seemed unable to move. Then, just as he gave himself up for lost, she appeared to change her mind. "My poor child," she said in quite a different voice, "how cold you look! Come and sit with me, here on the sledge, and I will put my mantle round you, and we will talk." Edmund did not like this arrangement at all, but he dared not disobey. He stepped onto the sledge and sat at her feet, and she put a fold of her fur mantle round him and tucked it well in. "Perhaps something hot to drink," said the queen. "Should you like that?" "Yes, please, your majesty," said Edmund, whose teeth were chattering. The queen took from somewhere among her wrappings a very small bottle, which looked as if it were made of copper. Then, holding out her arm, she let one drop fall from it onto the snow beside the sledge. Edmund saw the drop for a second, in mid-air, shining like a diamond. But the moment it touched the snow, there was a hissing sound, and there stood a jewelled cup full of something that steamed. The dwarf immediately took this and handed it to Edmund with a bow and a smile. Not a very nice smile. Edmund felt much better as he began to sip the hot drink. It was something he had never tasted before, very sweet and foamy and creamy, and it warmed him right down to his toes. "It is dull, son of Adam, to drink without eating," said the queen presently. "What would you like best to eat?" "Turkish Delight, please, your majesty," said Edmund. The queen let another drop fall from her bottle onto the snow, and instantly there appeared a round box tied with green silk ribbon, which, when opened, turned out to contain several pounds of the best Turkish Delight. Each piece was sweet and light to the very centre, and Edmund had never tasted anything more delicious. He was quite warm now, and very comfortable. While he was eating, the queen kept asking him questions. At first, Edmund tried to remember that it is rude to speak with one's mouth full. But soon he forgot about this, and thought only of trying to shovel down as much Turkish delight as he could. And the more he ate, the more he wanted to eat, and he never asked himself why the Queen should be so inquisitive. She got him to tell her that he had one brother and 2 sisters, and that one of his sisters had already been in Narnia, and had met a faun there, and that no one except himself and his brother and his sisters knew anything about Narnia. She seemed especially interested in the fact that there were 4 of them, and kept on coming back to it. "You are sure there are just 4 of you?" she asked. "2 sons of Adam, and 2 daughters of Eve, neither more nor less." And Edmund, with his mouth full of Turkish delight, kept on saying, "Yes, I told you that before," and forgetting to call her Your Majesty, but she didn't seem to mind now. At last the Turkish delight was all finished, and Edmund was looking very hard at the empty box, and wishing that she would ask him whether he would like some more. Probably the Queen knew quite well what he was thinking, for she knew, though Edmund did not, that this was enchanted Turkish delight,